All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Scuttlebutt Podcast. I'm Rich Mellon. Today I have a guest from Minnesota, and Greg Johnson is his name. Greg either blames me or credits me with his change in lifestyle. I'm not sure which, but you said in your introductory email that you even had a miniature donkey named Gary, and I thought, well, that's a step too far.
It is. It is. But we've even scaled back from that because we had a girlfriend for him named Kathy. So my dad was named Gary and my mom is Kathy.
Oh,
So, yep. It was funny with that. Mom didn't like it too much, but it was just like high school. Every time I walked out of the house, they'd both yell at me. So it was like reliving my youth every time I left the house.
I've never had a donkey, but I have a daughter-in-law that is just crazy about donkeys, especially miniature donkeys. She wants miniature donkeys so bad. Yeah.
They're the coolest thing.
Are they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. All the girls. So we have four daughters. They go in there and sit, and he just comes and puts his head on their shoulders and he just lays there. And he's the most loving thing. But a coyote comes around, he's the orneriest thing in the world.
Is that a fact?
Yeah.
Is that a fact?
Yep. And I will correct you on one thing. I
What's
am a Norwegian, so it's easily confused. Greg Thompson, not Johnson. It's
sorry.
interchangeable. No
I'm
worries.
sorry.
Well, what's funny is when we get into the story of how we started watching you, we didn't call you Rich and Sandy. I kept messing up the name. So every night it'd be like, hey, you want to watch Rick and Cindy? So it's payback is what it is.
Well, no, my day all day long is dealing with people, and you're talking with people nonstop, and you're bouncing all these names in your head, and you're doing emails and all this kind of stuff, and I'm actually impressed with how bad my memory is getting at my age and everything, that I screw it up as infrequently as I do. But I'm sorry. Yeah, I was just talking to another fellow tonight, Greg Johnson, who's a gunsmith.
Yeah. No worries. I have such a common name. I don't know that I've ever bought a gun and left with it the same day because I get flagged for common name. So I always have to go back and pick it up a day or two later.
Oh, cool. Okay, so you guys do have a type of registration there then?
Yep, absolutely. Yep. If you purchase a long gun, you need to fill out your information and they do a background check. And if it comes back clear, you can leave with it that day. But if you just happen to have a name like Greg Thompson and there's a ton of you around and they can't clearly identify you, you have to wait until you clear and then you can come back and get it once you're cleared.
So that's a state law then in Minnesota?
That's federal.
Oh, that's federal. Okay.
Yep.
We have a card. And it's like your plastic driver's card, and it is
Yep.
my possession and acquisition license, and I flop it down on the countertop and I walk out with the gun every time because
Yeah.
it says I'm
I have a
pre-approved.
permit. Yeah. Yep. I have a permit to carry. So I can register for a U pin, but it's more of a pain in the butt than it'll actually benefit me.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's
Okay.
yeah, I just know that I can give my money, but I may not be excited for a day or two.
That's dangerous too. Going back to a gun store like that's dangerous because in between you have time to think about, well, that old 4570 sitting over in the corner there looked like it needed a friend, or
It might just be a giant marketing ploy because I am a marketing person's dream. So you
yeah.
never know. They might just have my number.
You're a fellow with money, a marketing person's dream.
I don't know about how much money I have, but I don't mind getting rid of what I do acquire. That's the problem.
Oh, yeah. My wife, who is a banker, okay, and she was a banker for years and years, and she actually got very high up in the Royal Bank in Canada, which is the largest bank in Canada, and she ended up getting out of what she actually enjoyed doing because she was no longer facing the clients. She was now taking care of people, right? And
Yep.
I forget how many. At the end there, she was doing all of northern Alberta and some of northern BC, and it was like $1.4 billion that she had under management. And the people, she went through like 10 people a year, and it was just a nonstop search all the time. So she didn't care for that a lot. And I guess now 3 years ago, she retired from that and went and got all of her accreditation and certificates and everything, and now she's a wealth manager. So she looks at me and she said, we're kind of yin and yang. Your money was meant to circulate, and I'm meant to collect it. Yeah.
You can always make more, right? You can
Oh,
always
yeah.
make more.
She don't she said to me once, and it was the most brilliant thing I ever heard, and it kind of validated my life a lot better, was that everybody knows how much money they have in their bank account, but none of us knows how much time we got left.
Exactly.
So I kind of like that. And it's so true. It's
Yeah.
so true. I mean, I don't know. I was probably, I don't know, I would maybe 30, but about the time a man grows a brain, right? Around 30. And
I'm still waiting.
oh, it'll get there. Don't worry. Cause all of a sudden you realize that, what are you waiting for? Because this isn't practice, right? This is
Yeah.
life. You might as well be enjoying it. I mean, because everybody says that, life is too short to be unhappy. That it's way too damn long too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you reached out to me and you said that you wanted to talk about uh, how we influenced you into transitioning, and you started out with how you started even watching our show. You said you started with Forensic Files and then morphed into us. That's quite a leap.
Well, absolutely. So Forensic Files, if you've never watched it, the narrator has like the perfect voice to fall asleep to. Now you'd think that you
Oh,
dream about all this random stuff like being murdered, but no, it just blanks out. But all of a sudden we watched every episode of Forensic Files and we're like, oh crap, now what do we do? Well, Amanda and I are both just avid outdoorsmen. So we were searching the bowels of the interweb and we're like, what's this trapping ink? So we started watching it and that became our nighttime ritual. And like you said, I haven't grown, or like I agreed, I haven't grown a brain yet. So I kept messing up your names. So every night we go to bed and we're like, hey, you want to watch Rick and Cindy? So we still jokingly refer to you guys as Rick and Cindy. So that's where that came from. But
wait a minute. You were watching us in bed?
going to sleep. Yes, come on.
Too much information.
Still clothed. Let's just to be clear. Yes, still clothed.
You wouldn't believe, if you watched our show, you seen when we had made the beaver blanket that, and then we did an intro and an extra in the bed, and my wife was so embarrassed. She couldn't believe that she was actually in bed on TV. I was like, I was pretty casual about it.
Absolutely. But once again, I mean, it's, if you can't make fun of yourself or have fun with yourself, it becomes a very long existence. So
Yeah.
good for her for doing that and getting comfortable with it. And that's it. But we just started watching you. And so I grew up a dairy farm kid, right? So dad was always too busy to do anything. Well, he would do a lot of things, but the one thing he'd never do was plan, right? So like you'd be 20 below and it's like, well, let's go cut wood. Like, shouldn't we have our wood like stacked up? No. So we never had time to do anything. So my only trapping growing up was gophers. I would trap gophers in the summer because then you'd take them up to the neighbor, take the feet up and get a buck, put them in a snooze can and go get a couple bucks for the feet that you turn in. So that was my little monetization plan as a kid.
More
But
kids
both of
learned about currency trapping than anywhere else, right?
Absolutely. Well, and usefulness of waste, right? That Copenhagen can, I hauled more gopher feet in Copenhagen cans than you could imagine. So who knew they were such a good storage device? Um, but so that's all the trapping I had. Like I had aspirations. We would go deer hunting, but dad was a Vietnam vet and he didn't have the good experience. So like he would just go deer hunting because he knew that I wanted to. He hated every minute of it, but he loved every minute that he was doing it with me. So like hunting was, I enjoyed it, but it was something that I had to pull him to. So I had very few opportunities. And once again, we were farmers. So we just go out a few hours a year. So fast forward, get the opportunities, get into the big woods, start hunting more, start fishing more, start adventuring more. And then when Amanda and I came together, she wanted to do the same thing. So we start watching you, and her dad had 700 acres up by Grand Rapids, Minnesota, on the Prairie River. So we're like, hey, it's it's martin and fisher season. Let's go trap martin and fisher. We didn't know a damn thing. So we watched a YouTube video, figured out how to make boxes, because we watched you. You're supposed to hang boxes on the tree. That's how you catch these things, right? We hang boxes on the tree. Nothing climbs a tree. Couldn't figure it out. That's the first time I reached out to you. You may remember I asked, I'm like, hey, we get a lot of interest, but nothing is climbing the tree. So then you instructed me, put it on the ground. So just reaching out to you, we put it on the ground. We started catching martin and fisher. And it's like, oh, but we didn't know any better. We had no mentors. We had nothing, but we had your videos. And then by just the graceful nature that you have, the response from you to help us continue this. So fast forward to COVID, we went up to Alaska. We went up to Anchorage. So that's our place. That's where we vacation. And we went to the kickoff of the Iditarod and the Alaska Fur Rendezvous. Have you ever been to the Fur Rendezvous?
Not in Alaska, no.
Oh, so great time, right? So they've got the fair on the water where the farmers market is. They've got the fur auction, all the goings on. It's awesome. So it was Amanda, myself, and our youngest, who was 12 at the time. And all of a sudden we're watching this links up for bid. And all of a sudden they're like, sold. And all of a sudden our little 12-year-old goes up there. She had her own bidder number. She bought her own links and she comes back. So we're like, there's something here. So, and I've got pictures. I'll send you. I've actually got the pictures up. I can share the screen. It's hilarious. She had it and she slept with it. It's in bed with her, and it's longer than her. So it's pretty funny. Yeah. But flying back, we flew through Seattle, and Seattle was a hot spot for COVID at the time. So we got isolated on her dad's farm. So we weren't sick. We just couldn't go anywhere because the older kids in the cities, where we have a blended family, they kept getting flagged. They were around people. So there was like a 6 weeks period where we were living on the farm, just adventuring where we wanted, when we wanted. And we're like, kids are old enough. Let's start planning this. So we started looking for a place, and it had to have place for animals, because we'll get into that, but it had to have acreage and access to trapping, hunting, and fishing. So just simply watching your videos and understanding what can be done, and then adjusting to how to do it at a smaller scale and how to do it where you live. We bought a place in the middle of nowhere. We bought a log house on 80 acres. We have 14 miles behind us until the next road in the middle of Aiken County, which 14 miles and 3 feet of elevation, like I told you before, but it's all state land. We just have this giant playground where now we, wake up in the morning, go check footholds. We've got snares. Right before I came in, I had to go in. We've got livestock. The dogs were going nuts. There was a pack of yotes running around going crazy just outside. And but none of this would have happened if we didn't fall in love with trapping and start getting out. That first martin season, we would work and then we'd drive 3 hours north, check, and drive back. There were times we were getting back at 3 a.m. and going to work at 8 o'clock. So, but that's how addicted we got, and that's how fun it was. So when I reached out, because what triggered me was on a podcast, you asked, who are some of your mentors? And I just wanted to take the time to let you know, like, you guys actually are affecting people in a positive way. And you drove us to be the happiest that we've been, because there's no stress up here. Lino Lakes, Minnesota, in the outer rim of the cities is a lot different than Palisade, Minnesota.
Yeah. No, I understand that. And I understand when I can watch the light come up in your eyes when you talk about you've got 14 miles behind you and you're on the edge of the woods and the yotes are out with the animals. I mean, that's my everyday life. I mean, and I understand that. And, we go off on trips, we travel a bit, you end up in the city for a couple of weeks or whatever, and you just can't wait to get back. And you can just, as you drive down, the driveway, and that you can feel the stress bleed right out of you. The next step is in when we go north to the big trap line, and and you're in the middle of nowhere, like, and it's the next step up, right? But
yeah,
I understand very much what you're talking about. Isn't it strange that our world got so far away from this, which is obviously so imprinted in our human psyche, in our common human history,
Yeah.
that everybody that experiences it feels it.
Yeah. No.
It's there. It's something that we all have.
Yep. And it's even for me, it's even more bizarre because I grew up a farm kid, right? Farm kid, 30, 40 miles east of Fargo, right? Right on Highway 10. So lake country, but once again, flat farm ground. I couldn't wait to get off the farm. That's all I wanted to do because we were dairy farmers. Milk in the morning, milk at night. You're late for everything.
Yeah.
Whenever anything, you go to the lake, anything's getting good, you're going back home to milk. So I could not wait to leave. But then, like you said, when you hit 30, you get a brain. So I have kids. I'm trying to figure out like how do I teach the kids the work habits that I got growing up on the farm? How do I make them relevant when we go back home? I found myself wanting and yearning to get back to the farm. And then so I worked in big tech. So Epicor, Oracle, Salesforce, Microsoft. I'm a sales guy. You made fun of me for if I'd shut up, we'd actually start the podcast. There's a reason I talk for a living. The
Perfect.
yeah, the the I got an opportunity to get back into agriculture. So now, I had access to land back home and I started associating with all the people I grew up with, right? So I left the farm to learn tech. And then all of a sudden I got the opportunity to take 20 years of learning and bring it back to the people that I grew up with. And it just solidified the fact that that's where I wanted to be, who I wanted to be around. And that's what I wanted to be associated with. So even today, thank God Starlink internet
Mm.
because otherwise I like HughesNet was it, like 12 megs a second. There's no way you have video on anything. But Starlink, heck, we have 5 people streaming stuff all the time. We're, constantly on meetings. It just made this a reality. And man, I tell you, you have a tough meeting, you have a tough day, you just throw on the snowshoes, go for a walk, and life's good.
You sort a lot of stuff out when you do that, don't you? Like
Absolutely.
I have right now with what we've got left going, basically links will be over here in 2 weeks. And so Martin and Fisher are done. I've got otter. I'm just starting to do a little bit of beaver, that kind of thing. So I don't have a really tough check out there. I can do it on, a whole Saturday kind of thing and half a Sunday. But when I get out there on Friday, Friday night, we get to the cabin in the dark and I get the generator going and I get Sandy gets the fire going and once her and the dogs are settled down, then I'm gone and I don't have to be, but you should see some of the spectacular pictures you get.
Oh,
The moonlight. I have hit 3 full moons in a row now with a clear starlit night, the whole works. It's just the pictures just beyond belief. It's kind of weird when you talk about, like us influencing people, we get, because we do get a lot of questions about it. And I'm 63 now. We've been married coming on 44 years. And it's really, people talk about how, what's the secret to success? Well, you can't really compare what we've been through to what people are facing today. It's
no.
so very different. When we got married, Jesus, back in 77, like when we got married, it was it was just you got up every day, you went to work, you're going to get a home of some sort, or and nobody was into big mortgages or into big houses or anything like that. Like, I mean, if you could buy a 1,000 square foot house, that was a big deal. I mean, most of us lived in mobile homes to begin with. That's what we started in. And you weren't unhappy. You weren't planning for a holiday or anything else. You just knew you're going to get up and go to work every day. And, in between you raised kids. And I look back and I think it's kind of lucky we didn't have any money, but we did have time. And
Yeah.
so, with our 3 kids, I mean, we spent all the time with our kids, and that was the glory of youth, like now, and 8, 9 o'clock at night rolls around and I want to sit down and do nothing. And back then would still be going hard till 10, 11 o'clock at night with the kids, right? And just
Yeah.
doing stuff, right? It was
Yeah.
just a very different time. And to compare it to today, there's so many more pressures today to have the right car, the right clothes, the right house, all that kind of stuff. We didn't have any of that. None of that
Yeah.
pressure. You just wanted a home, you know. Uh, I remember and do you have basements in houses there, or is that not a common thing?
Yes.
And
No,
yes,
we have basements. Yep.
okay, it's very common in the north because I mean it's the cheapest area to heat, right? Because it's
Yeah,
half buried in the
absolutely.
dirt and everything else. But I remember my parents' basement was still unfinished. It was still concrete walls, you know, when I left home and got married, that kind of stuff, you know. And I mean, you knew at 18 you were leaving home, you know, and at
Yeah.
18 you're out on your own. I mean, that was the adult thing you were doing, and the world has just changed so much from then, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the immediacy. You know, I attribute the downfall, when I say downfall, the softening of society, to when kids didn't have to wait till Saturday morning to watch cartoons because there was nothing to look forward to. They're like, you think of it, that was a valuable lesson. Like there was something to look forward to that you worked through for every week, and your reward was popping out of bed early, sitting down, having cereal, and watching Saturday morning cartoons because that's the only time they were available. And once the Cartoon Chant Network came on, once there was, you know, I never have I had cable as a kid until 19 years old. I didn't have cable. We had our 4 channels. You know, it wasn't there. The immediacy of everything has just wrecked the appreciation of so much, which is a question I have for you because you know, you just talked about the 3 perfect full moons, right? How do you balance with trying to capture content with making certain that you appreciate the moment first before you have to grab a camera, before you have to capture that moment in order to share it, in order to drive content? How do you ensure that you're appreciating it as much as everyone else is?
I'll confess, not always. I don't always get the job done, um, and it's just because I'm human and I get lost in the moment too.
But
And
that's
all
awesome. That's the answer you want to hear, right? Because so many people don't do that. You get to the end of your journey and the camera comes out. You go to a concert and everyone's watching it through a phone.
yeah,
Like there's no real moments anymore.
no, you're right. And I mean, we're a lot of I mean, we do a lot of work, and the camera adds a lot of work, no question about it. But there's still stuff happens that there's just no time for a camera. I mean,
Yep.
last Friday I did something for the second time in my life. I shot a lynx. Like, I mean, I have no idea how many lynx I've killed in snares and traps, but I've shot 2 in my life, and one was last week. And it was driving along, and you know, you must have links there, right? You're far enough north for links?
No, we don't have links.
No? Okay.
We have to have safety mechanisms on our cubby boxes to account for links, but I haven't seen a lynx in years. I remember we had one around the farm when I was a kid, but that was 40 years ago.
Okay.
We don't see them. We have bobcats.
Okay. Well, same thing. Way, I'm on the snowmobile, and way ahead of me, all of a sudden I see something out of my trail, right? And I'm just on a bit of a rise. I go down through a dip and I come back up again, and I watch, and all of a sudden it sits right down on its bum on the trail. I know immediately it's a cat, because dogs, like canines, don't do that. Canines
Yeah.
would never sit down on a road, or if you're going down a road or whatever, and you see something up there that's sitting on its bum, it's a cat every time. And I knew it was a cat, and just so happened I had a 22 with me, and I drove up to it and didn't get very far from it, and it bounced off into the bush, and then it stood there under a tree looking at me. So in here in Alberta in Canada, I can't have ammunition in that gun. And it's an old beater 22 I've got, and it's got a tube magazine. So I got to get it out of the I got to get it out of the Colpin that I've got wired to the side of the machine, and I get it out, and then the twist end on the magazine is welded together, and I get it twisted off. Cat's still sitting there, and finally I grab a handful of ammunition out of this bag I have underneath the seat. I drop 3 in, and I shoot, and I hadn't shut the machine off yet, because if you shut the machine off, you scare them. Okay, as long as that machine is running, I don't know why. I mean, it's with anything. If you're shooting
Yeah.
a chicken or anything, if you want to scare it, turn the machine off. So I shot, and in my I'm getting very deaf, and plus the background noise and all. I hear this little, and I was like, "What happened? I had bad ammunition or what?" And he jumps and he takes a few more steps, and so I load it and I go again, and he jumps and off he goes. Like, I'm not sure what's happening, because it didn't sound right to me. Anyway, turns out both shots were good, and I'd shot it through the ribs because I mean, a lot of people would want to shoot him in the head because it's instantaneous, but to the ribs is a lung shot, kills them just about as quick, and you're not dealing with blood. Okay, yeah. When you're dealing with a fine fur like marten or like a lynx, that blood's a terrible thing to get to try and take care of. So, but that's just there was no time to set up a camera or anything else. I mean, I did film it after the fact, and we just don't do any BS. Like, our show has not got any forced drama in it or any garbage. There's times when machines fall through the ice, or I go swimming or whatever. And I mean, there's time to talk about it afterwards, but at the moment it's kind of serious. Like, I mean, we are, it's been my life. Okay. Been my life for a very, very long time. And I'm pretty casual with it. And so one day it'll kill me because I am pretty casual with it, but just don't, people get excited about wolves and coyotes and lynx and they could all kill you. Yeah, they could. I'm not as, we have cougars and grizzly bears and black bears and all that stuff out on the line. And it's just not so, I don't know, the immediacy or the I'm not overwhelmed by it. I'm just used to it. It's just part of my life.
Yeah.
Cold in that, I'm a little bit more cognizant of, because it can kill pretty quickly. And I've had some bad, go arounds that way. But, for a lot of people, they get a hold of you and they want to talk, and they're just like, how do you sleep at night when there's bears and that kind of stuff around? I was like, just, usually without clothes on, but,
Watching Rick and Cindy.
Oh yeah, no, come on now. I don't need that.
That's funny you mention that, because we're really lucky because we have we're in a good spot. We have family with good spots, and our friends have really good spots as well. So we can run multiple trap lines and get into different areas. But my best friend has a place up on the North Shore of Superior, up by Lutsen, and he's just an avid hiker. He can't sit still. And the other day he went out, no pack, nothing, and he came across, he's got a picture of about a 200-pound wolf in his front yard, and he came across that wolf and 3 others out on the trail, and they wouldn't yield. Like, he tried, like they weren't yielding. He just backed out and left, and it's like, I got to see what happened. The next day they urinated, they defecated, they marked everywhere that he was, but they're not going to do anything to you. It's when you're in the woods and without a grizzly bear or without a cougar, your number's up if something's going to take you out. I mean, that's the odds of that happening. So it's
part of it is that, I mean, a grizzly bear is going to take after you just because he's always been the man. Yeah. And if he feels like it, he's going to come stomp your butt, because he's always been the man. There's never been a black bear black bear kills a lot more people than grizzly do, and because black bear will get predatory, which means they want to eat you, and grizzly bear just isn't that way. Cougar, riding the horses, or what's been happening around here, people on pedal bikes in the mountains. It's just, really? I guess it's something about the profile or the way it happens or whatever. I mean, cats are, how you can flash a laser light past a cat and it reacts right away. Well, you come by on a bike fast like that, they react right away and that kind of stuff. But
they don't think. Yeah. I got a whole new affinity for bears, though, because we got honeybees. I've never had bees. Amanda's had bees. And we had an electric fence up, and that wasn't even a yield sign. Like, hives were gone. We're like, shit, now what do we do? So we had 5-foot metal cattle gates. So we put metal cattle gates around it, and the thing wouldn't climb over, but I had a camera out there because I wanted to see what was going on. And this thing would reach through, and it couldn't, and then it would just sit right on its haunches, just sit there and kind of shake its head, and it would sit there for hours. It would try something, and then it would sit back down. And just to be able to observe the curiosity and just the intelligence that they had, I'm like, this is like this is really intriguing and very interesting to me just to be able to witness this. It cost us a couple hives of honey, but now we know if we start with cattle gates, they'll stay away.
You need to talk to like my son-in-law. They ranch, and they have a lot of electric fences there, and he taught me how to do a double ground, and he says
Yeah.
like you can weld with it over the set the setup that I ended up getting, because it's solar, because I don't have power out there, so it's got to be solar and everything else. He said it's good for like 12 kilometers or like 8 miles of
Yeah.
is what it's good for. And it's going, 30 feet by 30 feet by 30 feet. So it gets pretty exciting if they touch it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But the
No, but
double ground is what's important. But that's the fascinating part about both your lifestyle as homesteaders and being trappers, is that that's as close as you ever come to like having a conversation with those animals, and you actually you spend time with them and observing them and learning from them at times of years when nobody else is even in the bush.
yeah,
And
no,
that
that's one of the biggest benefits. And, even for people, even foraging, right? Mushrooms, like going, anytime you take a walk, you can essentially come back with something to consume, right? Whether it's you're going to fry up fiddlehead ferns, whether you find scapes, whether it's morel season, chicken, hen, whatever it may be, right? Chanterelles. There's always something that you can, like, scouting throughout the years. Awesome, right? But you're constantly looking at the ground for game trails. Make it purposeful, right? So
yeah
see, and the more involved and the more in tune you get, the more excited you get about all of this, because everything just starts making sense. And you can't wait till the next time you get out there, because you don't know what you're going to find. Whether you find a burl, whether you find a crap load of chaga. I mean, I have a whole, 50 pounds of chaga behind me that I need to process just from going out walking.
yeah
Like, there's so many different things you can, I mean, trapping is one thing, right? And to me, there's nothing better, because even deer hunting, it wasn't the kill that excited me. It was the science behind it, figuring out where are they going to be, why are they going to be there, when they're going to be there, how do I get myself in the right position? Now I take that to how do I get an animal to go into 3 to 7 inches of the world where I want them to go.
yeah
It's it's there's nothing more challenging and more exciting.
you got 14
And
miles out behind the cabin there, and you want to put his foot in an area that big.
absolutely, it's crazy.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
I know what you're talking. Before we go any further, though, tell me about your bees. How many bees do you have?
We had 6 hives. And
Okay.
so, just so you know, to set the stage here, Amanda is the brains. I'm the Sherpa. So she plans. I couldn't tell you a number. I just lift heavy things and do the
Yeah,
manual labor. So I know we had
build.
six
I do a
hives.
lot of building.
Yep. So, and that's one thing. And the honey, it's so it's over our grass hayfields, right? So, but we have bird's foot trefoil, Indian paintbrushes, clover. It was the lightest, best honey that we've ever had. So we're excited
Oh,
to do it again. Yeah. And then
yeah.
we are upgrading. We've got it's only like a 16 by 40 some greenhouse, but we're going to all hydroponics, just
Oh,
because we got tons of land, but we don't have much soil. I mean, we're in between the Mississippi River and the Willow River, and essentially everything was washed away except the clay. So
oh,
and when you start breaking it down, it is so economical just to get set up with what you need, like $700 to get your blocks, to get your water, to get everything. But then you never have to weed. You always have the right nutrition. You're not bending down. Life becomes easy. And what got me hooked on it is, you know, being the nice thing about the cities is you're minutes away from everything, right? You want fresh greens, you want fresh vegetables, everything is right there. It's called lettuce grow. It's a hydroponics tower. So we've got 30 varieties of lettuce, tomatoes, sugar snap peas growing at any time. So I'm a carnivore. I grew up, I hate vegetables. I do not like salads. By having that readily available and that fresh, I find myself wanting more of it. So by doing that, now we're like, let's just turn the greenhouse into a variety of that and make it easy, because we're both still working. Amanda's an outdoor writer. So she's part of the OWAA,
Oh,
and she
cool.
write. Yep. So she writes for a bunch of companies and a bunch of publications, and we're still busy. So we don't like weeding a greenhouse. We don't have time for that. It's got to be done. And that was the whole thing. Like once we decided we wanted to try to live this lifestyle, you know what? I'm going to put out 100 traps. Holy shit. Putting them out is one thing, going back and minding them is another. And and that doesn't sound like much to you, but when you're going 2 hours to just drop your wheeler off and go check, drop your sled off and go check, and then you're going 4 hours the other way, like you have no time. Your car turns into the office and it becomes work and it becomes stressful.
Yep.
So that's why I understand, like the big thing is when you try to determine the economy of scale of what you can do, you need to be really mindful, because what you decided to do for joy can become work very rapidly. And if you're not truly invested in it and you don't truly enjoy it, it'd be very easy to set it down and not get back into it the next year.
Oh, and that's very true of the TV program. And I mean, I started it to defend the life. And I still believe in that, but there are times when I was like, it's another coyote, and I already have 20 coyote on tape or whatever, and I just take it easy and enjoy life, right? Because
Yep.
it's a lot of work. There's no question that, I mean, it's a lot of work. You're talking about your honey and it being so clear and light.
Yeah.
Our honey this year was like water clear. And
Really.
yeah, I was just out checking my bees. We have 4 hives, or had 4 hives. I think 3 of them are still alive. I'm not sure about the one. They were, but we had a hell of a bad winter early, like around Christmas, and that a lot of 40 below and all that. Everybody says they'll winter well, and I insulated the heck out of them, but we'll see how it goes anyway. It's fascinating though. We do the greenhouse. I have a giant garden, and I just set it up. You're talking about weeding. I just set it up so that my garden tractor with the rototiller goes in between every row. So weeding isn't so bad. and,
Yeah.
we have wonderful soil here. So no question there. But I really want to get that information about your tower of lettuce there, or whatever you call it, because when you have it, when we were kids, we picked berries and we tended gardens and all that, and I was kind of like you. When I got away from the farm, it was like I'm never gonna. I could starve to death in a field of berries, never bend over and pick one
Yeah.
up, and now it's I don't know whether it's nostalgia or part timers or what it is, but it's God, I yearn for those days again, and we've really enjoyed it. We've had a great year as far as getting a lot of berries and stuff, and processing, and it's so funny because it's just Sandy and I,
Yeah.
and we, it's not as much food as you think, but man, there's a lot of people love see us coming, because we usually have we're bringing a box full of quart sealers of pie filling and jam and stuff like that, right?
Oh, absolutely. Well, and that's us, because we raise Scottish Highlands. So we raise our own beef. We have Tibetan yaks. So that's going to be the next meat source. We have a crap ton of goats. We have the donkeys, or the donkey now. We have a couple horses. Like I've got enough stuff to keep me busy, but like, and chickens, right? So we've got layers, but we were going to do some meat birds this year. And I've always said no, because her dad raises meat birds. And I'm like, those are the most disgusting things in the world. And growing up, my little hometown, there was a Campbell's chicken barn there. So I'd go vaccinate chickens for $6 an hour. You grab them, you pull out the wing, and someone sticks them, and those things would scratch you and they'd crap on you. Like, I hate those things. But we decided we were going to do some meat birds this year. And I'm like, if we're going to do one, we're going to do 75. So we did 75 of them. They turned out awesome. And I actually enjoyed it. And it is so nice having our own beef, having our own chicken. we keep our freezers full every time we're low. We go back to Alaska, stock up with silvers and halibut, come back. So like you said, people love visiting here because like it's it's like going to a steakhouse whenever you show up. Fresh vegetables. I don't do grass fed. I say they're grass raised. They have the option to fatten up on feed at the end if they want to, but it's up to them. Who am I to tell someone what to do or tell something what to do?
Yeah.
So I put it there if they eat it. But even, not just the trapping, but even having those animals, having the greenhouse, if in a world like I live in for a profession, I never get to see anything done. The completion of something is the signing of a paper and then a check being received. And if you're wired to need to have the necessity to see something completed, it's a very unfulfilling career. So going out and feeding animals, checking traps, tending to a greenhouse, even harvesting lettuce in the winter downstairs, like watching the seedlings, it is so satisfying. And what's crazy, it sounds so simplistic, and I probably sound sappy, but it is completely changed anxiety levels. Like it has made me a completely different person. Just the decision to get out and simplify.
Oh, no question. And I mean, I always talk about it's so good for my soul. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
people look at you and think, well, you're pretty weird at going out and trapping animals or whatever is good for your soul. But it's a way of healing, I think.
Yeah.
And we did chickens this year too. First time since I was a kid. And we did meat chickens. And I remember losing a lot of meat chickens when they'd be growing. So we wanted 25. One son wanted 25. The other son wanted 25. So that was 75. So we thought we'd get 100 so that we'd end up with 75. Well, we got 100. She threw in 7 extras where we bought the chicks from, and like 103 made it to butcher. You'll see that on the show this year.
But that's a great problem to have, and that's one of the things. I don't think I can do it this year, but next year, I don't want to buy any meat. Granted, I still like to treat myself, like get a 3-inch thick tomahawk ribeye,
Yeah.
but I want to go one whole year without buying meat and trying to get by without any vegetables at all. I think I'm pretty close, but I don't think I have the dedication to do it right now. So next year's the goal for that.
Well, I'd like to, I gotta find out about this hydroponics, because that's the only thing we're missing right now. Like we have enough. We're still living off of the potatoes and the carrots and onions and that from the garden. They're all fine. My daughter has cattle, so I mean, if we want beef, we get beef from her. Otherwise, my cattle comes with 5 or 6 points per side, and most people call them elk, and
Yeah.
and I feed them in the garden all year long too, so I don't feel bad about shooting them at all. And yeah, we got an elk and a moose off out of the backyard last year, and we are just so set up. I mean, we have a lot of chicken. We eat a lot of chicken right now because we ended up with so many more than what we were supposed to. And I just had a hen go broody on me. We have 10 layers right now. And in the wintertime, that means we're only getting like 3-4 eggs a day, right?
Yeah.
But I just had one go broody. So a friend of mine, I don't have a rooster because 10 is just about enough for a rooster kind of thing. And I don't have one yet. So I went to my friend and I grabbed a half a dozen eggs. She has a good rooster, and I shoved them underneath the broody hen, and we'll see if she hatches it out. We got ducks. Do you have ducks?
How do you like them? No, I don't.
They're
I'm not
messy and they're
allowed
stinky
to.
and
Yeah.
but they are egg laying machines.
And if you're a yolk person, aren't they? They're like great eggs too, right?
Yep. Yeah. They have a much larger percentage of the egg is yolk. Plus they're probably double the size of an extra large chicken egg. Yeah. And we have six ducks that are layers, and we get 5 eggs a day in,
That's
day out.
awesome.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
That's like our chickens. We have, what do we have? Just 7 layers right now, but we 5 eggs a day,
Really?
which is about right. But oh gosh, we went to Mexico a couple weeks ago and we spent like 10 days. If you ever want to go on a food tour, go to Oaxaca, Mexico. And oh, unbelievable. But we had Amanda's mom do chores and London, the youngest, and we wrote the list. Well, we forgot to write water the chickens. So
Oh
they
no.
have a big heated water. So when I come back and they're out of water and they had stopped laying. And of course, the one time I want them to lay when eggs are $8.99 a dozen, they're on strike. It took me 2.5 weeks to get them to start laying again.
No. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
So yeah, like, oh, okay, we can't omit one thing on the list.
Do you
Um,
do you keep light on them in the wintertime?
yep. Yeah, they have a heat lamp. They have a heat lamp all the time. And then we have LED lights in there that are set on timers.
Yeah,
So
I just we have a white like not the red heat lamp, but the white light heat lamp in there.
yep.
So it provides heat and it provides, and I have it hanging down in the bottom third of the coop, so and they can get up on roofs above it and sleep or whatever. But if they're going to be down where the food is or where the water is, then they're
Yeah.
in light, because we on our shortest day of the year we get like 6.5 hours of daylight. And if it's
Yeah.
snowing, you get 0 hours of daylight, you know. So we
Yeah.
have to and people, it's I get such a kick out of the internet doesn't make us stupider, but it sure shows people how stupid we are. And lets the world know, right? And people talk about, oh, do I have to, do I need to heat for my chickens and that? And yeah, you never need to. Chickens are where I live, you need to heat for chickens, or you're just you'll be up on charges for freezing them solid and killing them, right?
Absolutely. And that's the thing, and just the crazy projects that you decide. Like we needed to put in waters this year. So we went with waters out in northern Canada. They're called drinking posts. They're a PVC hydrant is what they are. They're just paddle fed. So we decided to put them in on Thanksgiving weekend. So I put 50 hours on an excavator on Thanksgiving weekend, like it was a small city water project. And then thank goodness we got a ton of snow right away, because
Oh yeah.
we've been 25 below, 30 below, no freeze up. And my father-in-law, who was super skeptical, those things are not, every time it's cold, his electric ones are froze up. And I'm like, oh, so we're putting them in for him next year. Um,
We
so,
don't have any
but
large animals, so we don't need to have water like that. I know, like my daughter and her husband. I mean, that's one of the banes of their existence is watering. And like I don't know, they have like 700 head of cattle, and so it's
wow.
water, 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 right? And it's a
Yeah.
big deal. I don't have that problem. I mean, I pack water by the bucket, and I mean it's good for me. So whatever.
Yeah.
I just got
So when you talk about the cold, for people who don't live in the north, I don't think they understand. We talk about the how freeing it is just to go out into nothing. But I don't think people understand on a 20 below Fahrenheit night, which is almost, when does it equal out Fahrenheit and Celsius? Is that 30 below?
40
When is that?
at
40
40.
below?
Yeah.
So 20 below Fahrenheit, if there's no wind and it's a crystal clear night, there is probably no more refreshing time to be outside and go mess around than on a night like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you think that way, but when there's no wind, 20 below is, I'm not, like, I don't want to sound crazy, but it is 100% enjoyable. It's one of the
Yep.
best times to be out because you hear everything. Like it's my favorite.
Well, yeah, you take a night like that, and then the northern lights, and you can actually hear
Yes.
them. I mean, you can hear
We
them crackle.
no, you what? No,
Yeah, you can hear the northern lights.
we're not that far north. Either that or you just said you're deaf. I don't know what you're actually hearing. So
My wife tells me. She tells me what I'm not hearing.
you see those? They're making noise too.
Yeah. No,
Make sure you tell everyone.
I can remember when I was a kid, you could hear them. Like, I mean, they are. I mean, they do have a buzzing, crackling noise to them. But the thing I like about it is you take a moonlit night like that, or a day, minus 20 below Fahrenheit would be like about 30 below Celsius. when it's sunny and it's calm and you walk out and the air's got a bite in it, you know, if you breathe deep, you kind of get a little bit of a burn. That's a pretty liberating day. You
You
feel
just feel alive.
yeah, you feel good about it, you know. You feel good that you can accomplish about anything you want. And it's funny too, it's all in your attitude. You ever
Yeah.
notice when you start a winter, you know, when it first gets down to freezing, it's like, oh Jesus, it's cold, you know, and you're putting coats on and all that. And then this time of the year, like when it gets up to 32 Fahrenheit for you guys or 0 for us, you're out there, you know, in your t-shirt and wandering around.
It was today. It
Yeah.
was 35 degrees and you're in a t-shirt and just, hey, you got your winter skin on.
Well, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're climatized. I had the big door open on the one side of the garage there, just because the ducks are in the garage right now and they stink so bad. So I had it open and then I'm laying on my back on the floor there, working on a snowmobile, putting it back together and making repairs. And it was sun was streaming in. It was beautiful, but you know, you're just used to that weather, right? I really
Yeah.
enjoyed this time of the year because it's so liberating uh, in the days before the mosquitoes, you know.
Well, that's just it. I make that statement that how much I love winter. Now, let me clarify. I love winter, but when there's not tons of snow. When you get tons of snow, winter starts getting problematic for me, right? Because then the ice gets slushy for ice fishing,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's just harder to move around. So, but people with snowmobiles, they love it. But for me, I love ice cold with minutes enough snow to track stuff because you have the whole world to yourself. Everyone goes in
yeah.
and like 1/1000th of the population in your area is outside. You have everything to yourself. And that's what you said, the mindset. It's just getting back to the simplification of life where all of a sudden those things are meaningful to you. Wow, it's just crazy how different it makes a person feel.
You know, and it's funny because we started, you know, we get a lot of questions and people always, you know, about this, that, and the next thing. And I realized that I skip so much, I condense so much. My TV shows are technically good for a trapper, but not for the beginner trapper because I just skip so much. It's just I call it muscle memory. Your hands do by themselves, so you don't think to show it, right? And
Yeah.
I'd like to hire a cameraman who knew nothing about trapping, but was a good cameraman and come along because they ask you a lot of questions and, you know, then you'd explain a lot more, you know, they'd say, why are you doing that? Or what's this about? And because I never think to do it. I have a reason for everything. And I condense things down because I'm trying to show, you know, what I feel is important. I mean, it's important to show the set, you know, the technology and the success, that kind of stuff. Everything else I miss out on. Like I don't show near enough of the scenics, the landscape. Like there's some shows you watch where they accomplish nothing in the whole day,
Yeah.
in the whole show, and yet you feel kind of satisfied having watched it, you know. And I need to do more of those. Not like I'm not telling everybody that's what's coming, but
Yeah.
we
No.
ended up, because we've been asked so many questions about our life and people are really more, I think it's because they identify with us. They feel that we're good people and we're like them, so that makes them good people, or vice versa, or whatever, that they're good people and we have similar values, so makes us good people. But they want to know more about your personal life, which is fascinating, you know. And I just never think about it. So I mean, yeah, we're showing more things like the bees, the gardens, the greenhouse, all that kind of stuff. You know, Sandy's favorite bread recipe, and you know, we have a
But
monster on the countertop right now. It's called sourdough starter, you know.
that's I've got 2 gallons of kombucha brewing right above me. It's like all those things. But you know why that is because of something you said earlier. You're not looking to create content. There's no drama, there's nothing scripted because you guys play such real characters. And when I say like you're on a TV show, right? So you're a character. but you're yourselves. People feel so connected to you that they want to understand more about you. So I think that has a lot to do with it, is the authenticity that you guys bring forward in what you portray on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, however often you're putting stuff out now.
Well, I mean, it's honest to God truth, easiest job you ever have, because we're just us.
Well,
All we're doing is just chronicling what we do. But you end up, your everyday life to life stuff, like sitting down and eating a meal and that kind of stuff, is just your everyday stuff. And that's, so, I mean, it's kind of boring to you. So you assume it's boring to everybody else. And that's not true. People,
no, not.
yeah, I post a picture of the cabin or inside their house or inside the garage. The questions that I get asked about, what's that over there? What's this? What's that? What do you do with that? Like, people just take those pictures apart, and blow them up and check out everything out in it. And the questions they ask it's fascinating. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
And I enjoy it. I mean, I'm kind of, I'm in awe that people find my life that fascinating, because I find it boring sometimes,
It's because you live it. I mean, look at the stuff you did. You were a professional walleye fisherman. How many
Yes,
houses have you built?
a lot. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. No, but I mean, there's a lot in that. We live in a complete log home in the middle of nowhere. I'm like, I'm a software executive. Amanda's a writer. We're as simple as they come, but I've done stuff at NASA. She's been on TV. She won Deep Fried Masters, the Minnesota State Fair edition. Like, the thing is just because someone's simple doesn't mean there's not depth underneath it. But by having that authenticity and that simple, coming across as simple, it's a lot easier for people to peel back the onion. So it's just being who you are and not trying to be anything else and enjoying those small things. It invites people to want to understand you more. Not even just you as a TV personality. Us, people start asking, "What do you do?" And they're like, "What? You've done what? You won what?" It's like, really? And like, yeah, well, it's a big deal. Like, yeah, met with executives from John Deere this week. It's like, no big deal. Like, that's what we do. But then we come home and we go out and we feed our goats, our yaks, our cows, and but that's what we enjoy. Like, it's that authenticity. And then also it's doing, you know, you can stack up big piles of fur, right? We can't. We can get 4s, 5s. Martin and Fisher season, we can get 2. So it's either 2 Martin, 2 Fishers, or 1 of each. Can't do a lot, right?
Yeah.
So what we do is, luckily, Amanda and London, they're great with knives. So they do all the skinning. They do all the fleshing. They do everything. And then they'll actually make gloves. They'll make hats. They'll do all that stuff. And because we're doing all that, well, damn it, now I bought myself a dermestid beetle colony. So now all of a sudden I'm doing deer heads for people. So like all of the, like, there's so many different things you can do to pass time that are just fun. And once again, you meet, 10, 20 people. Now all of a sudden, oh, you live right over here. Just because all of a sudden, oh, you need a deer head done, just bring it over. I'll throw it in the deep freeze. That's actually a pretty cool little setup that I got. It's quite handy.
Yeah. I think too, just talking with you about it here, it kind of enlightened me on something else, is that people look at you and you're obviously happy. And today people are always searching for the answers and all that. And when you take a look at where what our world has become, and the type of people and lifestyles that are being foisted on us, like the Madonnas and the rappers and all that kind of stuff, and those lifestyles, where they're making it rain at the strip club and all that. And then they look at you and they say, but he lives back there with his yaks and his goats and he's happy. So what's going on here? Let's check this out. Why is he happy? Is there something to it, or is he just simple? I get that question. Yeah, I get that question a lot. Are you just simple?
It could be the 8 concussions, let's be honest. No, but so you do this all the time. When you're out on the line, what's your favorite thing that you're trapping now? What do you enjoy the most? What species do you enjoy targeting the most?
Ah, each one has its lure. Um, Probably lynx. Probably like for end to end, it's the cats. And when you do something like wolves and coyotes, canines are actually, I mean, it's part of their nature. They're very, I don't want to humanize them or make it do the Disneyfication here, but they're very analytical. If you follow a canine long enough in the bush, you'll see where it backtracks and looks back over its trail. You'll see where, you know, it has cut it back through its trail and cut its own wind. And that, if you scare them, they always go into the wind, so they know what they're going into. Most game animals do that too. They go
Yeah.
into the wind, so because if they were to run downwind, well, they could be running right into trouble, right? So I mean, those kind of things. But cats are like stoned old little hippies wandering through the bush. They just do not, they don't do a lot of things that make a lot of sense. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, and there's very few things that you could say that are, you know, their habits alone. Like, I mean, they pee on things like a canine does. They scratch like a canine does. Um, you want to have fun with your trail cam, take and use a bit of lure, like some triple sec or whatever, and set in the summertime, set a post out, an obvious post or little stump or whatever, and put a drop or two of lure on it. Every animal will come to it, including moose and deer and bears and wolves and coyotes and lynx and marten fisher, everything. And just about all of them pee on it. Like,
Yeah.
that was one of the biggest lights out when the light bulb came on over my head for me was you always thought that just a wolf peed there or just a dog peed there or whatever. It's not. They all,
Yeah.
it's all communal. And I mean, it goes back to you old enough to have watched Michigan Outdoors. Yeah. Do you remember Fred Trost? Do you remember
Yeah.
when he got in trouble with Tinks about the deer pee? Do you
Yeah.
remember that?
Yes.
Yes. And you know, he said, well, within an hour, pee was pee. It was just basically urea and water. And it's true.
Yeah.
And it's true, you know, like they talk about the pheromones and that kind of stuff that are released, you know, when the doe is in estrus, which is true, but it's not there very long. And
Yeah.
it's the same thing when you take and set up a pee post for animals to go to. It's the same thing. Like even moose go there, you know, like
Yeah.
it's astounding to watch that stuff. But the lynx are just a little bit scatterbrained. They're not as predictable. Like if I want to trap wolves, I'm going to set up a situation where, you know, they're not going to be looking right at the snare when they come in. I'll have it on a hill, or I'll have it on a corner. They'll deflect off the corner and into another snare. You got to take advantage of that and take advantage of the pack hierarchy, you know, that's
Yeah.
always going on. They're always juggling for their position in the pack. There's none of those things that you can count on with a cat. The only thing that I can count on with a cat is if I see a cat track here once, one day there will be a cat track there again, and I don't know why. You know, I probably learn more from them because you just have to give up. It's kind of like finding religion. You just have to give yourself up to Jesus, because you if a cat comes in from the behind a pen and circles one way, the next cat's going to probably come in the same way. You know, if they come down the trail and find your pen that way, then that's one of those areas for that. But I have pens where I have you know, snares behind the pen because that's where the cats come from, and I don't know why. Because I always set up, you know, whenever you set up a snare system or your footholds or whatever, you're setting up with to the predominant winds, right? So here it's either going to be a north or west wind or northwest, something like that. You know, those combinations are the most common. But I have some where those cats come out of, you know, they will come in from behind a pen that's set on the west side of my trail. They'll come in from behind and find it. Like, you know, what's going on there? And it's not
Yeah.
just once. You know, once could have been the wind that time, but I think they're traveling through and they get close enough that they either see the visual of the toy I have hanging there, or they actually get a smell of what's going on in that. But you have to pay attention to them because they're always talking to you, and they're the one that I have the biggest learning curve on. Every now and then they throw me a curveball, and things like otters and fisher and martin and that are pretty predictable, especially for us in the wintertime when and like mink, very predictable.
Yeah.
But we don't have any open water mink. Like
Oh, really?
no, by the time our mink season starts, it starts on the 1st of November. Everything's frozen. So I don't have any of that um that bottom edge sets. And I mean, the closest I get to a bottom edge set is it's on top of the ice, but they'll go underneath an overhang and on the creek
Yeah.
bank, that kind of thing, right? And I mean, it's simple. I mean, you have a creek that goes like this. Well, the mink are going to bounce off of every corner. It's as
Yeah.
simple as it gets, and the otter do the same thing. It's so funny. Grandkid set me down and he says, "Grandpa," he says, "let's watch this." And it was on Netflix. It was documentary. It was about Yellowstone. Maybe it wasn't Netflix. Maybe it was Disney. I don't know. Great. I was at their place, and it was about Yellowstone. And he says, "Look at this, Grandpa." And they're talking about the winter, and it was really cool to see the old the bisons, and they're all just covered in the frost and everything. And they look pretty prehistoric when they walk out of all that,
Yeah.
the guys are smoking all that, and they're just covered in hoarfrost. It's like that looks cold, but it looks like I'd like to go there. That'd be cool. But they were talking about these otters, and there was this mother and kit otter, and they were talking about how it was just the end of the world, and that they had to go over the mountain or down the hill or whatever it was to find where there was going to be open water because they'd never survived the winter. Otters travel for miles and miles and miles
Oh,
through the snow. You know it where you're at. You got lots of otter there,
yeah.
and they are continually traveling. They don't go find an open piece of water or a place to get in under the ice and stay there for the winter. No, they're there for a week, maybe a week. I mean, I will go, and where my trap line is the headwaters of a river. And so there's a bunch of little creeks and little bodies of water and all that. And there's all these, the trickle down effect that you have coming to
Yep.
the headwaters, and it's all pretty musky and all that stuff. But each one of those, wherever I cross that, a watershed or whatever, whether it's a little creek or just a seepage or whatever, if there's an otter going up, if he's headed upstream, I know I can set a trap, and I know in a week's time he's coming back down. A week's time I'll have an otter there if it doesn't snow or blow in between and fill in his tracks. So it's they're a lot more predictable. But the whole thing was that I got a kick out of was this Disneyfication about how the mother was had to pack the little one over the mountain and all this kind of stuff to go find water, and they weren't going to make it otherwise. This purest BS. You know what I mean? It was spectacular footage, but they're
Yeah.
talking about how they just finally made it over the mountain range, and yet the hillside's all covered in otter slides, right?
Yeah. And isn't it, you talk about solving the puzzle, like especially with links, right? There's no real way to pattern them. Think about the opportunity for people who have a problem solving brain, right? That's how
Oh,
they think, and that's how they're satisfied. If you could get, I mean, even like remove the trap, right? Getting out in the wild, and even like a camera trap. Like if people would understand how complex it is to pattern an animal such as a lynx and then experience like, oh man, I did it. It would change the perspective of so many people as to how they view what we do in the woods.
there's no shortcuts.
Yeah.
That's the one thing. So many people get a hold of me and say, I got this, and this. Where should I put a trap? I was like, hell, I don't know. How well do you know your trap line? You know, I mean, there's some basic stuff. I mean, it's like you stop at it's like driving. You stop at a stop sign. You look left before you turn. That kind of stuff. But you, especially for lynx, lynx are a prime example. So you just got to know your trap line, because where you see
Yeah.
one cat track, you're eventually going to see another cat track. I just had one here last check, a place where I'd the day after I put up a fisher box, because there was a nice fisher track, put up a fisher box. Next day I come back, there's a fisher there. And so I take in, I keep setting it, and I had lynx come that winter. A lynx came there twice, and they put his foot up against the tree and look up into the box, and because there's beaver meat up there, and lynx
Yeah.
can smell beaver meat for forever, right? So I set a lynx pen there, and I've been tending that lynx pen for 3 years. Well, last check I had a lynx, and it's really funny because there had been that 3 years ago, a couple cats through there and nothing. And or I mean, I can't say nothing because you can't always tell. Sometimes it snows so much that you couldn't tell a mouse track from a moose track. I mean, and so you don't
Yeah.
really know. And it's really egotistical to think that that one pen there on the corner of those intersection of those two seismic lines, and that I'm going to have a big draw or control of what happens around. I mean, they can walk right by a foot away, and if it's snowing and blowing the wrong way, I mean, they're not going to know, that kind of thing. But I picked up one this last check, and the next day I was through there, and there was another track through there. I mean, right to right by the same place. So you just don't know. But for whatever reason, when cats move in that particular area, and we have a pretty large area. I mean, 144 square miles is our registered trap line, and you cut that back and forth, and if you were to slice it up in quarter to half mile slices, I mean, that's a lot of
That's a lot.
land to cover. Yeah, and when you have one person doing trapping that area, to think that they could overtrap it, it's kind of egotistical, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of animals there, right? And just to try and come in contact with them all the time. But that's what I mean though about the lynx, is that there's no predicting. There's no predicting, other than where you've seen tracks. That's a good place to start.
Yeah, well, and that's just it. You have to be attentive, right? And it's probably one of the biggest things that I'm all over the place, right? But when I'm in the woods, especially when I'm trapping, even when I'm driving now, it's like, oh, otter toilet, oh, slide, like, oh, onyx, oh, it's state land, all right, oh, drop a pit, like paying attention all the time.
Yeah.
And like it forces you to come in, and forces you to like mindfully do something, which for someone like me is an impossible task.
Well, what I like about it is that I'm a well, as a builder, I mean, you start at the ground up. You
Yeah.
take a pile of lumber and you turn it into something. And I like projects, and I like to complete them.
Yep.
And that's really important to me. I get a lot of satisfaction from that. And anything where hard work pays off, I'm successful at, because I'm not always the most intuitive or have the best, abilities, like when I fished on the PWT, I was the best Canadian, but that wasn't saying much. I was the only Canadian. So
Your prize money was in loonies.
but anything where hard work pays off, I do good at. Luck is another story, and I mean, luck is really important. But when it comes to trapping, I mean, it's a lot of hard work, and I mean, basically it's shock and awe. You get out there and you get everything covered off, and that you learn though. The longer that you trap an area, you learn what's productive, what isn't. Now, I've had 2 different trapline trips this week, this winter. And it's been kind of chaotic because I've had more people out on the trapline this winter, and it's kind of tough for me because I'm kind of, like Sandy and I, it's our spot, our place, right? It's where we go and
Yeah.
recharge, and so it's tough to share it with other people. But we realize that you have to, and you like to. I really like taking people out and showing them that, and especially if there's been fresh snow, because I always refer to that as reading the morning headlines in the newspaper, because
Yeah.
there is just so much out there, so much information right in front of you, right? But we donated a trapline trip with us at the Wild Sheep Foundation last year in Alberta, the Alberta chapter here, and I'm a director there, and I also edit a magazine. I wasn't doing enough, obviously. I was sleeping 3 hours a night or whatever, and I had to find more to do. So we donated that. Some folks bought it. We took them out in the trap line. It was awesome. It was awesome. They were young kids from Ontario, of all places, and which out in the West here, we think of Ontario as, them other people, them cityfied people and all that. And these kids came west to work in the oil patch and that kind of stuff. So they're like the Antichrist to their own family, and I thought so. It was a lot of fun talking to them. So what's Alberta like compared to what you're told? And, it was really cool to see the eye opening, and it was very enjoyable. They were wonderful. It made me feel good about the youth again. And then another fella had a couple of years ago, just before COVID, had donated a trapline trip, and in between his trapline got logged, and so he's got nothing. And so I stepped up and did that, and so we just had a fellow and his 10-year-old son out, and they were just fascinated by well, how can you tell it's this and how can you tell it's that, and like people have a trouble telling the difference between a weasel, a mink, a marten, and a Fisher track, and they're so obvious. I mean, you can tell 30 miles an hour what it is on, as you go by, right? But
Yeah.
to explain it to them, right? And well, how can that little weasel? How can he be jumping that far, and the marten's only jumping this far? Well, because that little weasel, he has a lot more higher energy than the marten. The marten lopes along, yeah. It's just a fascinating world out there. But I really like it when there's new people along. A little 10-year-old guy there, Carson, he was awesome because he asked some really good questions, and I just like to see when people's mind is working. That's he didn't have a phone out or anything else. I mean, he was there, he was in the moment, and it was pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah. Well, and that's just it, right? You guys with your show are doing it, but how do you keep the legacy going? Because there's less and less people out in the woods, less and less people doing it. It's harder to keep young kids occupied when there's not cell service. So, I mean, it's really a tough problem to try to think to overcome. How do you get those 8 and 10-year-olds? How do you get them hooked on trapping now? Especially if their parents are, right? Like
Yeah.
I mean, I just look at me. I had a dog, I had a 22 and a dirt bike, and I would just go get lost and I just see what I could shoot or see what I could find. But that's it. And then like you get older and you got to try to keep replicating that experience, and all of a sudden you have significant others and you have to pull away from that. And then the kids, here's the one thing that I found with the kids though, because and 4 girls, right? I wanted them all to be boys. I wanted them to have some level of being a boy. So they grew up ice fishing, they grew up hunting. But as I got older, it's like I really had to be mindful of what they were in it for. So like Liv, the oldest, she liked the camaraderie. She loved to be at hunting camp, and the guys would feed her Mountain Dew or Mellow Yellow, and she'd get all silly as a kid. Lauren, she'd sit over a flasher and just sit and jig. And Ava, she never wanted to kill anything. So we would just go for drives and count the animals that we could see. And then with London, we go somewhere, we bring her home a new knife. Like, what do you want? I want a custom, like we bring her custom knives and she's out skinning animals and creating stuff. But it's the individual experience, but what it's taking that and making certain that it's as meaningful for you as a parent, and like especially a grandparent now, but you have to kind of forego what you want out of it and just get the joy of what they want out of it. That took me, you talk about learning things and getting smarter as you got older. I kept trying to force stuff. And when I forced it, they would fight it and they wouldn't enjoy it. And when I learned to adapt my expectations tailored to what they want to do, and more importantly, separating them, because the oldest three, there's 20 months between them. The one was 20 months old when the twins were born. So like, it's just, it was a shit show from, 20 months on, but getting that individual time. But that's just it, right? What we enjoy in the woods isn't what our kids enjoy, and just tempering those expectations and tailoring those times so they're meaningful to everyone. Like
But
that's what I learned.
you still enjoyed the time together. Both
Well,
both
that's
sides
just
enjoyed the time,
absolutely.
and that was our youth. Like, I mean, we've often joked and said it many, many times that there was us and three kids in the household, and that, it was five kids, just two paid the mortgage was all, and I learned early. I mean, because I was always a hardcore fisherman, always hardcore at hunting, trapping. And I mean, if you'd looked up Jack Pine Savage in the dictionary, there would be a picture of my brother and I, and we would lived in a little city of about 10,000, and we had Bear Creek was within the city limits, and the Wapiti River was just, I don't know, 10 miles away. But we would take snowmobiles and go out across the Wapiti River, and have sleeping bags, and build ourselves a lean-to, and spend the weekend in the wintertime. And our parents were okay. We're okay with it. We were capable, right?
Yeah.
But I was very hardcore, and then all of a sudden my kids come along. Well, I could either make it unenjoyable for them and me enjoy it, or I could just do what made them happy. So my daughter was a better fisherman than my sons were, especially when it came to ice fishing. And when it came to actual fishing in the summertime, well, when that ice first goes off up here, we have a lot of pike, right? And every now and then there's a 40-inch pike, but most often they're pike like that, right?
Yep.
Well, you have those pencil reeds, they're sheared off by the ice, and when it leaves, and you take and cast a spinner bait out across that, and just reel it back, and those pike, you could watch them, because you're in water this deep, right? You can watch them just come rocking after. A kid gets that right every time, because they get excited and they reel even faster, and that pike just well, so I taught them. I wonder where I had all the energy back in those days. I taught them how to use bait casters. I taught those kids, they never learned how to use a closed face, or they never learned how to use a spinning. They learned on a bait caster. So I would spend entire days out in the boat, and without ever touching my own rod, because I'd be constantly fixing up a bird's nest. And it was, I don't know why I did it, but it was actually it was cool. It was cool. And they still talk about it today. I mean, our daughter is turned 41 yesterday, and she's our eldest. And I mean, our kids are all the second eldest will be 40 later this year, and they still come home. They still sit around the fire, and they talk about those days, and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, it was important. And the biggest thing was the time together. Whether you were on a back road somewhere, and had a toboggan out behind the truck, or the snowmobile, and puddling along, and they're going back and forth, and it was just time. It was just time, and you'd stop and build a fire and all that kind of stuff. It was you look back at it, and it was a heck of a good way. At the time, you were right in the middle of it. You just didn't notice it. You know what I mean? You were busy living, right? Which is cool. But you were talking about capturing people, and I don't know how we capture the youth today, other than outreach programs, or like in schools and that kind of stuff. But you know what? We're having a lot more people come to it later in life. Like, I mean, we're kind of in the middle of all of it, as far as telling people about trapping and that. And we air on the Pursuit channel in the US, and so we get a lot of feedback in that, from that. And it's people that just want to go out and try, and they want to learn. They're fascinated with it. And I guess today's world, I mean, there's some things that are not as big a challenge, or as big as accomplishment as nature is, right? And nature has its own rules. It doesn't matter. You can't go buy a cheat code to beat nature. You know what I mean? You have to put your time in. So it's pretty fascinating that way. I worry about the capturing of people, but then so many things are cyclic. When COVID hit here in Alberta, we all of a sudden sold hundreds of thousands of more fishing licenses than we had the previous year, and it was because people couldn't do anything else. And we both Sandy and I sit on the Alberta Conservation Association, which we get a stipend off of every license to do conservation work and all that. she's the treasurer. I sit there as a representative for Alberta Wild Sheep, and it was fascinating. I mean, it was $1.5 million extra dollars because of these
Oh,
people buying
wow.
fishing licenses, and it was funny. Now it's starting to bleed off as life has returned back to normal or whatever normal is. But it's funny when you think about that. Fishing was competing with all everything else. Trips to Mexico and
Yeah,
the mall and all that kind of stuff. But fishing when nobody else had anything else to do, fishing was pretty good. You know what I mean?
absolutely. Well, and that's just it. There's it became a necessity, right? And when there's not a necessity, somehow people need to understand the urgency. Because when you spend enough time in the woods, things are changing. Like you said, your buddy with his trap line couldn't fulfill something he gave away because it was
Yeah,
logged.
yeah,
Like there's only we talked earlier about capturing something in the moment, right? Like
yeah.
the three perfect that doesn't happen all the time. And the only way to experience is by being out there. Just like with any work, any job, getting a house done on time, there needs to be a sense of urgency. People need to understand that there's a sense of urgency that needs to be related to getting out and experiencing nature because it's changing every day. And a lot of it's not changing in a positive fashion.
No,
So,
that's true. That's very true. And it's kind of funny. Um, where my trap line is a very busy oil field. Okay. So, and it is all deep oil sands.
yeah,
Everybody knows about Fort McMurray and about the oil sands there and how it's being strip mined. Well, that is only 3% of Alberta's oil sands can be strip mined. Only
really.
3%. And they've done less than 2% of that 3% at Fort McMurray. But the rest of it is all far too deep. So they do what's called SAGD, which is steam assisted gravity drainage. And so they go down and they frack,
Yep.
which they have horizontal drilling in that, and they frack it, and it causes the seepage of oil and natural gas in that end, and they mix it with condensate, which is another fluid from down there. Condi is probably what saved Alberta the most during this last downturn, because Condi was still $1,800 a barrel and never changed. And most of our gas here, or most of our formation here is what they call wet gas, or so it has Condi in it. And so this Condi they mix with the bitumen, and it's called diluted bitumen and dilbit, and then it flows. And so they can bring it up. So I'm in a very, very busy oil field area, but because of capitalism is constantly trying to produce the most for the least. This in
Yep.
your business, your inefficiencies and that kind of stuff. I look at the differences on my trap line, and it wasn't very many years ago that if they were putting just a single hole straight down, basically
Yeah.
running a straw down to a reservoir, right? I would lose 5 acres of land. Okay. That's what it took to drill that well. And that's what they set the pump on, or whatever, the donkey. And there was 5 acres. And now that 5 acres might have 12 holes in it. I've got a couple of different formation or well sites on my place there that have, for 10 acres, they have 24 wells there.
Oh,
That when they
wow.
set that rig up, it actually walks. Okay. And they're going down like a kilometer down and then a kilometer sideways. And think about the roots on a tree and how they go out and they bifurcate and that. And
Yep.
that's what's down there. The technology is astounding.
Crazy.
I've had the people at Baytex have sent me 3D projections of what they're actually drilling down there, and the fact that they can go down and they can make a Y, and they can come back and they can Y off this one and this one, and it goes on and on and on, and they go for a kilometer away from that well, and they'll put 24 of them, 12 to 24 of them on 10 acres. Well, then they take and they work together. If they might drill over into a neighboring company's lease. well, then they have a profit sharing set up with them, and they split the costs of moving the product through the pipeline and the roads, and like there's this big cooperative thing going on there all the time where they're trying to reduce their impact and their footprint, and I find that fascinating. Like, I mean, the changes that have been made, it's not all bad. It is some,
No, oh no, yes, yeah.
I
No,
mean,
I'm not a tree hugger.
no,
So I hope I didn't cast myself as a as a as a hippie right there, but
no,
it is
I
changing though.
didn't take it
Yeah.
that way. I never, until I had any other trap line I ever had was never in an oil producing area. So this is a very big oil producing area, and it's fascinating the changes that have happened even in the last 10 years. They've taken fracking from being non-existent to in the last 10 years they've dropped the price from has went down as much as 70% per well site. It's fascinating. I mean, this all affects a guy as a trapper, because I take a look at everything is an oil well lease, an oil or a lease road or whatever, lease being the word, how important words are today, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
lease means temporary, right?
Yeah.
It's not temporary in my life. It's
Yeah.
not temporary, it's permanent. So I mean, so you there's things that we work with. My oil companies are generally very nice to work with. They understand. You show them that they go and plow my trails, and they think they're doing me a favor. Well, I don't do anything by vehicle. I do it all by snow machine or Argo. So now, when it's plowed out in the wintertime, well, that's costing me parts and time, and sometimes shutting me right down.
Yeah.
Once they understand it, I mean, they don't understand my world much better than a lot of people would understand their world. So it's a cooperative thing, but we can exist side by side.
Oh, absolutely we can. And I'm jaded being in agriculture right now, and the lure of everyone chasing carbon dollars, right?
Ooh.
Carbon sequestration. We could have a whole episode on Greg Thompson's musings on carbon sequestration, because it's it's kind of like getting out and understanding nature for yourself, right? In theory, it's awesome, right? The more carbon we put in the ground, the more nutrients are, the more carbon's trapped, the more nutrients it provides, the better it is for the soil, the better it is for the earth, so on and so forth. But the monetization of that dilutes the value of what's going on so much. Like, you take a large organization, I was just on a flight, Delta, right? Delta buys carbon credits.
Yeah.
They go into a marketplace.
Yeah.
Someone acquires those carbon credits. Then someone else needs to verify those carbon credits. Then they need to pay someone to go pull soil samples, because that's the only, it's so insignificant by the time it gets to a farmer, there's no way that it's ever going to be adopted. So
well,
it's
not only that, how is it, this is like a religion where I
yes,
can prepay for sin. That
absolutely.
Because it doesn't stop the carbon. It doesn't stop it being produced. Buying carbon credits doesn't stop anything. Like we have a prime minister that is just an idiot about this kind of stuff, but he's all about about carbon and being carbon zero and all that. Well, if we play a big enough shell game and move the the 3-card Monte around and long enough, and pay this person, pay that person, well, yeah, we're carbon zero on paper. We're still producing carbon, but we're just exporting it somewhere else or whatever. I mean, it's stupid, that is.
Or even the trickery of reclassifying a standing forest as now an area that's sequestering carbon. It's always been doing it. Just because someone paid for a credit doesn't mean it's accomplishing anything.
I know with my land, most of my land is forested, and I could sell carbon credits off of it if I wanted to, but I got to look at myself and shave in the morning. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
well, it goes back to the simplification and being real, right? If you want to make a difference, understand what you're trying to do. It's like our little town, just 30 miles away, they're going to do a nickel mine, because nickel's needed in order to make electric vehicles, right?
Yeah.
So it's great. No, it's not, because they're not processing it where they're mining it. They're trucking it to the other side of North Dakota. So there's they're creating more carbon by
Oh yeah.
by mining it and shipping it than you're going to save by putting it in a vehicle.
10 years, this is my forecast. 10 years we'll look back at electric vehicles and laugh.
Yeah.
Do you think that's realistic? 10 years, or will it take longer?
No, it'll be 10 years because let's be honest, you like look at a farmer, right? Look at during harvest. Equipment's running 24 hours a
Oh,
day.
I know,
How do you
I know,
charge
I
it?
know.
Like, but if you created something that was a hybrid, so instead of getting, you know, instead of having, if you reduce fuel consumption by half, then you're doing something meaningful, right?
Yeah.
So if you're using electricity to power and using the diesel to power the electricity, I mean, all of a sudden you're making a difference. And when you reduce something by half and it's real, you're doing more than thinking you're going to reduce something by 100% and never accomplishing it.
That's true. And I mean, it wasn't like Toyota had never ever got into electric vehicles until the most recent chairman, the fellow Toyota, um, not Toyota, but Toyota. It's a D in there instead of the last T. He stepped down and said that he still didn't believe that the future would be electric, that it was hybrid was the only way to go. But why is it though hybrid has not caught on?
I don't know. Is it the pot? Is it how popular Tesla has become and how well you look at it? Where's the most dense populations? It's in cities where you
Oh
have
yeah,
a commute,
yeah,
where you have a commute that's inside of a battery range. Me and you, like on a
yeah. No,
Saturday,
it doesn't.
we'll run 8 hours one way and 8 hours back. Like we can't do it.
No, I know,
It's
I know.
and pulling a stock trailer. Come on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a reason I drive a F-350 diesel, and you know, Tesla just doesn't work, and the cold. You know, by the
Yeah.
time you get down to what is it, 4 degrees Fahrenheit, they've lost 40% of their ability to hold a charge. It's like you're already in useless zone.
Yeah. No, it's
It,
but it all paints like there's there's a reason to care. People just need to understand why they care. And if they spend time out in the wild, they'll get a lot better picture of why they need to make a difference. It's easy to fight for carbon sequestration when you're in New York City, when
yeah.
you're in Chicago, when you're in LA. Nothing's real. You think you're doing something great. Get out and see what you're affecting, and it like all of a sudden things become meaningful.
Well, we have the same thing too, like big cities of Edmonton and Calgary, and people in there downtown. You know, they're we actually they're big enough that where people don't actually own a vehicle. They get around by public transit. They don't go anywhere, and they don't have anything for lives really. Like I mean,
Yeah.
they're very sheltered, and then but they feel that they have the ability to speak up on what we do as wolves. You know, the snaring wolves, the feral horse problem we've got. Those kind of things. They talk about them like their voice is meaningful, and they don't understand what's going on. They
Yeah.
don't have any concept that we have areas now where horses are the major the major megafauna.
Yeah.
They are the keystone fauna, which means that they have uh, offset the moose and the elk. They have bumped them out. Like that's not right. And
Yeah.
they're feral. There's no such thing as a wild horse in North America. They're all feral, and if they're wild, then we just got a new minister for our for fish and wildlife, and he said, well, here's my take on it. He says, if they're wild animals, he says, well, then we got to set up seasons for them just like we do with the other wild animals. Well, then of course all the people who are big on the horses, oh no, they're not wild, they're feral. He says, well, then we go with the Department of Agriculture, and we feral animals and released farm animals, we have a way of controlling them there too, which is right. We have areas where like a wildlife management unit, which is how we break up our province for hunting,
Yeah.
and wildlife management unit where they count 14 moose and 400 and some horses. Like, I mean, we got to do something about that kind of stuff. But the people who are in downtown Calgary and downtown Edmonton, well, those are the horsies, right?
Yeah.
It's the same situation with the wolves. But
Yeah.
what
Wolves are big for us because you can't do anything, right? They're
do you
federally
want more?
protected.
Do you want
No,
more? We
we'll
already
ship them
we
all
already
back to you.
ruined Montana and Wyoming and Idaho with the ones we got.
Yeah, no, we have like it's it, it is crazy to watch the animals thin out when wolves move in. And it's we have quite the population around here. And I mean, I've been sitting on a meeting and looking out the window, and I've got two juvenile wolves sitting out in the hayfield staring at my animals. And what do you do?
Yeah.
It's and there's nothing we can do. And the
Do you not have the
we
right
have
to
a
defend your livestock?
we do, but it would be a pretty big pain in the butt. You know,
Really?
I had that conversation with the bear, right? Because I called the DNR. I called the Department of Natural Resource. I'm like, hey, here's the deal. This bear, it's taking out our bees. It's up around the barn. It's sniffing around the animals. If it doesn't go away, I'm gonna shoot it. So what do I need to do to not get in trouble? It's like, well, what have you done? I'm like, well, I've done a lot of things, but how do I not get in trouble? And the answer was, there's really not a way to not have it be a pain in the ass. So it's and wolves are even more complicated because that's a federally protected animal.
Oh,
If a
see,
black
it's so different here. Like bear on private land, I can shoot every bear that I see on any of my private land.
Yeah.
On my trap line, I'm allowed 6 a year on
Oh
out on the
wow.
trap line. Wolves are un, uncontrolled, and I mean I can kill as
Yeah.
many as I want to. Um, Coyotes on private land, you can there is a trapping season for coyote, but you can shoot them year round on private land with
Yeah.
permission, that kind of stuff. So yeah,
Yeah.
it, it's
We can do
it's
it with the oats. We just can't touch the wolves.
it's terrible though when that I call it ballot box biology. You know, it was
Yeah.
the same way that they got rid of the grizzly hunt in BC. I mean, they phonied up this BS story that there was only 15,000 grizzly bear in BC, which is still a lot of grizzly bear, but in actual fact, that's probably a quarter to a third of the true number. And so now there are more grizzly bear being killed as problem bears every year by government paid uh, fish and wildlife officers than there were being hunted, and nobody's getting any benefit from it. But they're okay with this. You know, like
Yeah.
the NDP government there is okay with those situations, and I just don't understand how you can be okay with that. Why, you know, you could be so popular by, you know, those animals have to be taken care of. Well, you should have, you know, a system in place where you can call the next 100 on the list, and we've got a problem bear here, come take care of it. I mean, they do that in Africa, for crying out loud, with
Yeah.
hippos, crocodiles, and elephants. I mean, like, are we not as advanced as Africa? You know what I mean?
Well, even a step beyond that, because I asked the agent when I talked to him, I'm like, all right, so if I do shoot it, do you want me to take his pants off right away? Because it was still warm, right? So, I mean, you know that you shoot a bear when it's hot, you get the fur off right away, you get a lot of good meat. I'm like, do you want me to do that right away so you can donate it to a food shelf to some? Nope, we just got like, you just have to waste it.
Yep.
So even like that makes so little sense when like you can purposefully use meat when it's at like if you're not keeping it for yourself, like that's one thing, right? I'm going to
Yeah.
shoot this, I'm going to keep the hide, I'm going to do this, keep myself. But if you shoot it, you prepare it to donate it to someone else, there's nothing in it for you. You're not
No.
keeping the hide, you're not keeping the meat, you're taking care of a problem, and you're helping someone else sustain.
Well, same situation we got here, but it's cougar, and cougar have made a giant comeback. I mean, they're predators, so they follow the deer, right? The deer
Yep.
have the mule deer and whitetail numbers are very, very high, and so they come out of the mountains, they follow down all the river valleys. Now I have cougar on my trap line, a long ways away from the mountains where cougar is supposed to be. It's a lot of probably have between 50 and 80 cougar that are caught by trappers every year, and they show up on your bait piles. Usually it's the young and the old. Okay,
Yeah.
so they'll show up in the bait pile. They can't make it on their own anymore, and you'll catch them in a wolf snare, that kind of stuff. We can't keep them. So we turn them over to the government and they incinerate them. Like, what kind of reason does that mean? They say, well, we don't want you targeting them. Well, I'm not targeting them, but I'm not stopping wolf trapping either.
Yeah,
I'm not, we use lethal snares, and when they walk in, it's a done deal. I mean, I can do it year after year after year after year, and you have to turn in those cougars. And why can't I keep it?
yeah,
Like, I mean, what difference does it make? My son, the first, I don't know, he's got 3, 4 now. And he's offered each time to skin the hide out, prepare it for taxidermy, and it could be made into a rug, it could be tanned or whatever, and to clean the skull and all that, and donate it to a school or whatever. Nope.
yeah. Just it's wastefulness, like you said, ballot box biology.
Yeah.
You talked about snares, getting back to a little bit. Um, you did a quick little video on lights out snaring, Corey Grover,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So I'm like, oh, I'm super intrigued. Reached out to Corey, super helpful. Like immediately it got me what I needed. I've referred like 3, 4 people to him, and he just like immediate response. That's one of the things, like this community. Like I said, you reached out, Corey, willing to help anyone. Um, there's other channels like the Hoosier guys, Justin and Charlie.
Yep.
You can call this. Everyone is willing to help. So anyone wanting to get into this, we've gone all over the place, but back to trapping, it's really easy because there's really smart people who want more people doing this. So like you look at me, I'm a dumbass. I just wander around the woods and like, hey, how do I trap something? And I figured it out. I'm not the best at it, but the only reason there's any level of decency to what I do is because of guys like you. So thanks for doing that.
Well, thank you. Part of when we started this was to defend trapping, and I realized right away that I was going to break one of the tenet rules of trappers, and I was going to tell the secrets. And you got to understand where I'm from. I mean, I have my trap line, and nobody else can trap it but me. I don't have any competition there, so I can tell you what I do there. You're never going to trap it. I mean, I'm not giving away anything. I mean, I'm sure maybe I won't catch you on Martin or whatever. You'll catch more using my own tactics, but whatever. But we have to spread that knowledge. And part of it was the best way to teach anything, whether it's kids fishing, the best way to teach a kid how to fish is for him to catch a fish, right? Like
Absolutely.
a slip bobber, right? Or that very visual spinnerbait coming across the top of the water. Boom, you've got a kid who's caught on fishing. And it was the same thing with trying to teach the ethics of modern trapping. The AHIDIS agreement for being what they consider now humane trapping, and that was the fact that we had to show that, one, how it was set up, how it was successful, and in between, long carried that story of the humane side of it, right? Because we were shut out of Europe. A lot of people don't understand that, but they shut us out of Europe in the 80s, and that was our major market. That was before the rise of Asia and China, and Europe was our major market. We were shut right out, and so we said to them, they said, this isn't humane, and they said, well, tell us what humane is. Define humane. So they laughed, and they defined humane. They never thinking that we'd ever meet it. Well, we did. We actually exceeded it. And then
Really?
well, there was the original stuff came in 87 was the original first time we had certified traps, and then there were 92 we had another an upgrade, tightened a few things up. But since people understand what humane trapping is, it has made a big difference. Once again, we're rebranding trapping, right?
Absolutely.
We're getting rid of the old impression of the animal sitting there and having chewed off his foot or whatever in the old leg holds. Now they're footholds. They're designed not to damage. They're designed not to allow the foot to freeze. They're just being held in place. My own dogs have been caught in my footholds on. Yeah. You know, the one, most of them only need to get caught once. The one a couple times. The neighbor's lab is the dumbest dog ever. I, I 2 winters ago, there was 4 times I walked out. I got, so I had to check every morning, you know, like because that dog would be out there. They'd let him out at night, and you know, I know the dog would be out there, and then you go up there and you walk, hey, how's it going? Jasper, his name was Jasper. And you know, walk up and I pet Jasper, and I just get my feet on the foothold, and I just open it up, and Jasper would be fine to go, and never had a limp, never. I don't even know that my neighbor knew how many times he's been caught. You know, so I mean, we had to you know, combine both the message and the fun and the success and all that kind of stuff. But the whole idea was to try and normalize things, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just, it was one of those situations where, you know, you as a trapper now yourself, and you understand, you know, the whole value of that pelt, that mink or that marten or whatever that you've caught is the pelt. Why
Yeah.
would you ever attempt to skin one alive? Like,
Yeah.
you know, I
Yeah.
mean
It makes
that,
no sense.
and we allowed that to be foisted on us because we thought it was so retarded, right? We just thought it
Yeah.
flat out that was just the most ridiculous thing ever, that we never bothered fighting about it, and we should have. We allowed
Yeah.
those that language to be carried on without fighting it, and I mean, it's stupid. It's
But
absolutely
Rich, look at the nature of a trapper, the traditional nature of a trapper. Where do they reside? Who do they talk to? What do they want to do? They don't want to fight that stuff. They want to disappear in the woods
yep,
and go chase animals.
yep. Yeah, oh,
So
they're very loners by nature, that kind of stuff. Exactly. And I mean, their whole idea was just to disappear, right? And to hide. And we've proven that over and over again, that hiding never solves anything. You know,
yeah,
you
absolutely.
have to get it out in front and address it. It's exciting though to be able to talk to people like you that have actually made that conscious effort to step forward. So in one way, technology made this possible for you.
Yeah,
Isn't that a crazy conundrum? You're going
absolutely.
back to the wild, but because you have Starlink, you can do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's, thank you, Elon Musk.
Yeah,
But even now with the ability to have Starlink in a vehicle, right? So we want to acquire a place in Alaska. So we want to go back and forth. Like I said, a Saturday for us, we don't care. We'll jump in the car and drive 8-12 miles and then drive, or 8-12 hours, and turn around, do 8-12 hours back. We don't care. We'll do it on a Friday. We'll work from the vehicle. So it's just freed up to have such a unencumbered lifestyle that it just stress can melt away, right? Because it
yeah.
can be easy and you can do things that you want. Like you look at my job, I type probably 100 words in a day. Everything else is I'm on the phone talking to people.
Oh,
That's all
cool.
it is. I can do that anywhere. I can do that anywhere in the world, as long as I have some level of a signal
Yeah.
and the ability to get to an airport. So, but and then it's wrapping all of it together. One of our favorite shows we like to watch. Have you ever watched Happy People? A
No,
Year
never
in the
have.
Taiga.
No,
So
I have not.
I think it's on Amazon Prime right now, but it follows trappers in Siberia in the taiga for
Oh,
a
okay.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like these guys were dropped off in the 70s and they forgot about them. They didn't bring them anything. Like it's super interesting.
Oh, it
And
would be.
oh yeah, and but just to see like trying to it's the same, but it's different. You want to emulate how they feel, how they act, but we have a completely different existence. But in some way, you just want to be as simple as them because they're truly happy just with what they have, what they're doing, and you know, what is possible in their life. Making a pair of skis just changes their life.
Yeah.
How simple is that? Like those
Yep.
those small things, just stripping it back. That's something that we've made a very conscious decision to do. Like you can probably see in the background, we go from, a few thousand square foot house in the cities to what's my footprint, 30 by 40 in a log house
Yeah.
with a basement.
Yeah.
Very small footprint, very simple. Now shit piles up. You find out how much stuff you really do accumulate when you have less room, but it's no, this has been such a positive change for us. And like legitimately thank you for opening our eyes to it.
Well, I can't take credit for it. I mean, somebody would have done it. It was there. It was always there in front of you. It was just, or in you, and it was just looking for sunshine and water. That was all.
Yeah, but it was the trigger. It was like it started with trapping marten.
Oh,
And
cool.
once we did it, we're just like, this is awesome. And then just expanding from there. Then beavers, otters, coyotes, just going. And all of a sudden it's like, shit, we got to move north.
You're very fortunate that where you live in Minnesota, that you have access to that. The folks that I hear from Kansas and that kind of stuff is like, oh my God, that is tough, you know?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, you look at us, we can go in our backyard and it's all state land, it's all forest land, like it's all public. We go to Red Lake. I'm sure you fished Red Lake
Yep.
At Red Lake before. The bog there, I have a buddy who's got a place there, and we've got just thousands and thousands of acres. That's some of our best marten trapping up there.
Yeah.
It's and bobcat, and it's so accessible and so easy, and there's trails everywhere. So it just makes life easy. And here's the thing. You don't run into, like, I don't run into other people's traps. I don't run across anyone else's sets, no matter where I go. There's that few people out doing it. So if you like to get out, you like to do something on your own, and just like I said, drive around. Hey, there's an otter toilet. There's a slide. There's a beaver lodge. Drop a pin, look it up. Everything's so easy on Onyx, right? Once again, being simple, getting away from tech, but here's tech that helps, right?
Yeah.
Onyx changed the game because I'm driving and I see something. Oh, state land. I'm going to go trap an otter. Like, it's just the simplification of knowing what you can do and where you can do it makes this hobby really easy, because you don't have to go to a plat book, find
Yeah.
Stress comes when you set on someone's land and you don't have property and you're out there checking it and that person comes up. That's never a good conversation you want to have.
Well, and I mean, whenever it gets too complex, that's a big turnoff. The fact that you can take care of it yourself, you know, like Onyx works. Onyx doesn't work up here because they just don't have nothing north of the 49th. But I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean. Like, all of Alberta has mapping in that. I have my in my GPS, and in my InReach, I have the outline of my trap line, and so I always know where I am. I always know exactly where I am, and then I'm on my line and that kind of stuff. But the technology has made that, even the ability to get around.
Yes.
You know, we did a podcast way back when, and the old gentleman died last year, but when he was, I think he was 14 and in grade 8 or whatever, he went to the bush for the winter and started to become a trapper. And he lived in a lean-to, and he trapped off of snowshoes and all that kind of stuff. And you get talking to him and you ask him, you know, different questions than that. And then about 3 years or so afterwards, his sister, her husband gave him a snowmobile to borrow. And my wife was talking with him, and she says, well, that's really cool. Then your line could be so much bigger. And he says, well, no, he says it was, I didn't have to pack all those animals back on my shoulder. And you not even thinking for a second. Think about that. Think about that. If you got a coyote or you got a lynx or whatever, that's all on his back until he gets it back to the lean-to thaw out and to skin and everything, right?
Yeah, he has a good day. That's just more work.
Yeah. We don't even think about that, you know. Like, I mean, it wasn't the fact that he could, you know, for us, a machine or access or whatever just means we can travel further. We're never thinking about the fact that all that fur came out on his back.
Yeah, like think about that if you have a successful day and you're 2 miles in, 3 miles in, 4 miles in by snowshoe, and you have to carry that back, you get to a point where it's like, oh shit, I caught another one.
Yeah. I've had days like that where the 12-foot toboggan was getting really overloaded. But I remember one day I had 4 wolves and 5 otter and 7 7 links. Like, I mean, I had
Wow.
and I mean, it was just heaped, you know. It was like, the little snowmobile was with skis were coming off the ground, and it was wet. One of those days when you get that wet snow, and so that wet snow piles in there. I don't know what that toboggan weighed. I wouldn't doubt it was, well, with the wolves in it alone. The bigger ones would have been 100 pounds. So, you know, there was probably 300 pounds of wolves alone, you know,
Yeah,
but
that's crazy.
yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what? We have talked for 2 hours here, buddy. And
Sorry.
no, this is perfect. I really enjoy this. We've had a long hiatus here. People just got so grumpy when as COVID was ending and we couldn't get any more people to come back on and do Zoom calls and all that. And I just got used to not doing it. And it was a bit to get organized again and realized that I'd let my Zoom account expire and all that stuff. But it's
Yeah.
awesome here. Once again, here's technology allowing us to do this and to spread the word. That is great. Do you guys do you have a website where you cover your
Yeah.
adventures, or
Yeah. So we're at Our View Outdoors, OUR View Outdoors. So we we've got it, like we do things like roamies. We document road trips. We do documentation of what we do. It comes back to, we had grand aspirations when we started doing this, but it came down to, I want to have more fun than
Yep.
I do turn this into a job. So we do a lot of interesting things, from exotic animals to Amanda's ability to cook and her recipes, to just the random trips that we take. It's pretty interesting. So it's worth a look, but that's not why I'm on here. I wasn't here to shamelessly promote us.
No.
Legitimately here to thank you for what you, Rick and Cindy, are
Yeah,
doing
Cindy.
for doing for everyone, and for the sport of trapping. And also, uh so many people have moved out on acreage. Just the knowledge that can be gained of what can be accomplished by having a hive of bees, by just the simple gardening techniques, the things that you're coming into now,
Yeah.
can have an even bigger effect on people, because more people are apt to do that than to actually get out in the woods and trap an animal.
The bees and the chickens and that, like, I mean, people find out that you have chickens and ducks and that right now with chickens and duck eggs are so expensive, and that, and you know, you can buy chicken eggs for me cheaper than you can buy them at the store, and people are just like, they're blown away. Like, that's they're right there, you know. People just have no concept. You know, I was born in a time where we all, like, I was 18 before I ever ate beef. You know, I mean, we lived off of wild game and all that kind of stuff. And to see the world have changed that much in my lifetime, where people don't even know where food comes from or anything else anymore, I didn't think that would ever happen in northern Alberta, let alone happen
Yeah.
in that little bit of time.
Yeah.
You know.
No, so good job documenting it. We appreciate it, and keep going.
Well, and I appreciate this tonight. This has been awesome. I'll have it up in a few days' time. We'll get it up on some of it anyway, maybe all of it up on YouTube. I just I want to get pumping this back out there again. I'm going to get back a hold of you, and I want to get the information on your lettuce, your tower of lettuce, or whatever it was
Yeah,
called there.
it's called the farm stand, and it's just lettucegrow.com. Now, they're not cheap. Like, it's like $1,000, which is, what's that, 32,000 Canadian.
Yeah, about that. Yeah. Don't forget
No,
shipping. Shipping would be
oh,
another 10
true.
or 12 grand.
No, but it's, once again, I'm going back to being a hippie, but it's made out of recycled ocean plastic, and like it's ridiculous, the quality of the lettuce that you get out of it, and peppers and strawberries. Like, I'm like, that's not my jam, but I go nuts now, like, when we don't have it. We also grow microgreens too now, because it's just so, I'm getting old. I've already had, like, I'm the guy who gets a colonoscopy once a year because I've already had a bad one. So if I want to
Ooh.
make it past, I got a year and a half till 50. So I'm like, should probably change some things up. You know, if kids are old enough, I'm looking forward to grandkids, all these things. Like, it's just easy. Microgreens, fresh vegetables.
I mean, I'm very much a meatitarian, but I love a balanced diet. I'm just a couple of months away from my first new hip, and we just got to take care of it. You know what I mean? But like I said,
Yeah.
when I left the farm, you can have too much of a good thing. When I left the farm, I swear I would starve to death in a field of blueberries before I'd ever pick another one. And this year we're planting a whole bunch of blueberries.
Well, freaking strawberries were labor. My grandparents would pick me up. They're like, "Hey, come on, let's go to the lake." And be like, "Oh, sweet." And guess what's right at the turn before we go to our lake? Freaking strawberry patch. Or we're going to stop in here so we can sit on a chair and watch your little ass pick strawberries all day. Like,
But it
yeah.
was awesome. I mean, when you look at it
No,
back now, it was awesome, right?
I mean, that's just it. And are we still recording? We're done. I
Yep,
mean,
we're still
I
recording.
I look at, there's like I talk about my dad a lot and the things that we did. My mom was a freaking savage. Like dad would go out of town to work, mom would milk. Like there's me and my mom. She one day she flipped over a wheelbarrow, rusty as hell, split her stomach wide open, goes to the neighbors, gets a butterfly, like just puts a butterfly bandage, goes back to work milking, never goes to the doctor. And like that's just the work ethic. Like you just being around that, you can't help but morph into that at some level. Like, because I'm the same way as you. I can work harder than anyone. I'm not the smartest guy, but I'll find a way to figure stuff out.
Yep.
And honestly, if it wasn't for her, I was such a dipshit that I had a basic training date for the Air National Guard in August, and I sloughed off my last quarter of high school. I was 2 credits short. My mom goes, "You're not missing basic training." And she did the schoolwork for the summer school. They made me take the test so she could ship my ass to basic training.
God bless mothers.
All right, but I better let you get going. I've taken up too much of your night.
Oh, it was perfect. Thank you very much. And hope everybody else enjoyed our rantings and ramblings and where we've been. Watch for this both on locals and like I say, we'll probably get up on YouTube too. Take care. Good night.